Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Life-Changing True Stories. Today, I bring you a powerful and deeply loving story. Asterisk, the morning sunlight filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sterling Enterprises, casting long shadows across the polished marble floors. Olivia Martinez adjusted her grip on the leather portfolio tucked under her arm, her heels clicking steadily as she navigated the familiar corridor to the executive suite. In her other hand, she balanced a tray with 2 cups of premium coffee, steam rising from the lids in delicate wisps. 3 years. That was how long Olivia had worked as the executive assistant to Damien Cross, the 34-year-old CEO who had transformed his family's struggling real estate business into a multinational empire. 3 years of impeccable service, late nights, sacrificed weekends, and an unwavering commitment to excellence. Yet somehow, it never seemed to be enough. The glass doors to the conference room were already open when she arrived. Inside, Damien stood at the head of the table, his tall frame commanding attention even in stillness. His dark suit was perfectly tailored, his expression unreadable as he reviewed documents spread before him. Around the table sat executives from a Japanese investment firm, their faces polite but expectant. Olivia entered quietly, setting the coffee tray on the side table before taking her position in the corner, tablet ready to capture notes. She had prepared extensively for this meeting, triple-checking every figure, every projection, every detail that might arise. The presentation materials were flawless, or so she thought. 10 minutes into the meeting, Damien paused mid-sentence. His piercing gray eyes shifted to the screen behind him, then to the document in his hand, then finally to Olivia. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. "The revenue projections on slide 12, he said, his voice cool and measured. "They don't match the quarterly report." Olivia felt her stomach tighten. She pulled up the file on her tablet, scanning quickly. He was right. A decimal point had been misplaced during the final formatting, throwing off the entire calculation. It was a minor error, easily corrected, but in front of these high-stakes investors, it looked careless. "I apologize," she said quietly, her voice steady, despite the heat rising to her cheeks. "I'll correct it immediately." "Immediately" would have been before the meeting, Damien replied, his tone sharp enough to cut. "This is the kind of attention to detail I expect from an intern, not my executive assistant." The Japanese executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. One of them offered a diplomatic smile, attempting to ease the tension. But Damien continued, dissecting the error with clinical precision, each word another small humiliation. When he finally moved on, Olivia remained frozen in place, the weight of embarrassment pressing down on her shoulders. The meeting concluded an hour later with polite bows and promises to review the corrected materials. As the investors filed out, Damien gathered his papers without looking at her. "My office." 5 minutes, he said before striding away. Olivia stood alone in the empty conference room, her hands trembling slightly as she collected her things. This was not the first time. Over the past months, the criticisms had become more frequent, more pointed, more public. Her work was excellent by any reasonable standard. But Damien's standards existed in a realm beyond reason. She thought back to when she first started. Back then, there had been moments when his stern facade would crack slightly. A brief word of acknowledgement after a successful project. A rare almost smile when she anticipated his needs before he voiced them. But those moments had vanished, replaced by an icy distance that made every interaction feel like walking across thin ice. 5 minutes later, Olivia stood in his office, the city sprawling beneath them through the windows. Damien sat behind his massive desk, fingers steepled, expression unreadable. "Do you know what separates excellence from mediocrity?" he asked without preamble. "Attention to detail," Olivia replied, keeping her voice level. "Exactly. And today, you demonstrated mediocrity." He leaned back in his chair. "I need to know that the person handling my most sensitive information is beyond reproach. Today, you fell short." Something inside Olivia shifted. Perhaps it was the accumulation of 1,000 small cuts. Or perhaps it was simply the realization that no amount of perfection would ever be sufficient. Whatever the reason, the words came before she could stop them. "With all due respect, Mr. Cross, I made a single formatting error in a 60-page presentation that I compiled in 2 days while managing 15 other urgent tasks. I have consistently delivered exceptional work for 3 years, often at the expense of my personal life and well-being. If that constitutes mediocrity in your eyes, then perhaps your expectations are the problem, not my performance. The silence that followed was absolute. Damien's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps, or calculation. "Are you finished?" he asked quietly. "No," Olivia said, surprising herself. "I'm tired. Tired of being treated as if my best will never be good enough. Tired of public criticism for minor mistakes while significant achievements go unacknowledged. Tired of sacrificing everything for a job where I'm made to feel inadequate every single day." She took a breath, steadying herself for what came next. "I resign. Effective immediately." For a long moment, Damien simply looked at her. Then he stood, slowly, deliberately, and walked around the desk until he stood directly in front of her. This close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes. The slight tension in his jaw, the way his carefully constructed composure seemed to require constant maintenance. "You don't mean that," he said. "I absolutely do." Olivia's voice was firm, though her heart hammered against her ribs. "I'll draft a formal letter this afternoon and work through a 2-week notice period to ensure a smooth transition." "No."
Oh.
The single word hung in the air between them. Olivia blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" "I said no. You're not resigning." Damien crossed his arms, his imposing frame blocking her path to the door. "You're upset, which is understandable given my criticism. But walking away in anger is not a solution." "It's not your decision to make," Olivia replied, feeling her own stubbornness rising to meet his. "I'm grateful for the opportunities I've had here. But I need to work in an environment where I'm valued." "You are valued. You have an interesting way of showing it." Something changed in Damien's expression then, a crack in the armor. For just a moment he looked almost uncertain, as if he was navigating unfamiliar territory without a map. "I need you here," he said, and the admission seemed to cost him something. "You're the only person in this entire organization who understands how I work, who can anticipate what I need before I ask, who has the competence to execute at the level required. Then perhaps you should have considered that before spending the last 6 months treating me like I'm incompetent." Olivia shot back. Damien was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working as if he was physically restraining words that wanted to escape. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, more controlled. "I was wrong. The way I addressed the error today was inappropriate, and I apologize." Olivia stared at him, genuinely shocked. In 3 years, she had never heard Damien Cross apologize for anything. However, he continued, recovering some of his usual commanding tone. "I can't accept your resignation. Not like this. Give me 1 week. A week for what? To prove that this position is worth staying for? Work directly with me, not as my assistant, but as my partner on a critical project. If after 7 days you still want to leave, I'll write you a recommendation that will open any door you want. But if you walk out today, you'll always wonder if you gave up too easily." It was manipulation, Olivia knew that. A calculated move to keep a valuable employee from leaving. Yet there was something in his eyes, some unspoken challenge that called to the part of her that never backed down from a fight. "And what happens during this week?" she asked cautiously. "We work together as equals. You speak your mind without fear of repercussion. Listen. We complete the Morrison acquisition, which requires both of our skill sets. At the end of 7 days, if you want to go, you can do so with my full support and blessing." Olivia studied his face, searching for the angle, the hidden trap. But all she saw was something that looked almost like hope. "Fine," she said finally. 1 week. But understand this, Mr. Cross. I'm not doing this to prove anything to you. I'm doing it to prove something to myself." "Fair enough." He extended his hand, and after a brief hesitation, she shook it. His grip was firm, warm, and lasted just a moment longer than strictly professional. As Olivia left his office, her mind raced with questions. What had she just agreed to? Why had he fought so hard to keep her? And most puzzling of all, what was behind that fleeting expression she had seen cross his face, the one that looked almost like relief? The city lights began to twinkle as evening approached, and somewhere deep in the Sterling Enterprises building, 2 people stood on opposite sides of an invisible line. Neither quite ready to admit that the week ahead would change everything. They thought they knew about themselves and each other. The game had changed, and neither of them was quite sure of the rules anymore. The first morning of their arrangement began before dawn. Olivia's phone buzzed at 5:30, the screen illuminating her bedroom with harsh blue light. A text from Damien appeared with characteristic brevity. Office. 6 a.m. Bring ideas for Morrison. She arrived at Sterling Enterprises at 5:50, the building eerily quiet in the pre-dawn hours. The security guard nodded in recognition as she passed through the lobby, her footsteps echoing against the marble. When the elevator doors opened on the executive floor, she found the lights already blazing in Damien's office. He stood by the windows, coffee cup in hand, staring out at the city as it slowly awakened. He had discarded his usual jacket, working in shirt sleeves with his tie loosened, an unusual informality that made him seem almost human. Morrison wants out, he said, without preamble as she entered. Got a call at midnight. His board is getting cold feet about the merger. Olivia set down her bag and pulled out her tablet. What changed? Competitors are spreading rumors about our financial stability. Nothing substantial, but enough to create doubt. He turned to face her, and she noticed the slight shadows under his eyes. We have 4 days to convince Morrison's board that Sterling Enterprises is not only stable, but the best possible partner for their company's future. 4 days? Olivia's mind immediately began racing through logistics. That means we need updated financials, third-party audits, testimonials from existing partners, market analysis, and a presentation that addresses every possible concern. Exactly. Damien moved to his desk, spreading out documents, which is why I need someone who can think strategically, not just execute orders. This week, you're not my assistant. You're my partner in this deal. That means equal say in decisions. Over the next hours, they worked with an intensity Olivia had never experienced. But something was different. When she suggested an alternative approach to the financial presentation, Damien listened, actually considered her words, and then built upon her idea rather than dismissing it. When they disagreed about whether to include certain risk factors, they debated as equals, each pushing the other toward a stronger position. Around noon, Damien ordered food to be brought in. As they ate, an unexpected silence settled between them, not uncomfortable, but thoughtful. Why did you really make me stay? Olivia asked finally, setting down her fork. Damien was quiet for a moment, his expression unreadable. Because losing you would have been a mistake I couldn't afford to make. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. He met her eyes, and something in that gaze made her breath catch. Ask me again at the end of the week. The days that followed fell into a rhythm that felt both exhausting and exhilarating. They worked side by side, often into the late hours. Their collaboration revealing depths to Damien that Olivia had never witnessed. He was brilliant, yes, but also surprisingly creative when he allowed himself to be. He made her laugh with dry observations about their competitors. He actually asked for her opinion, and seemed genuinely interested in her responses. On the third day, while reviewing contracts in the conference room, Olivia noticed a photograph partially visible in Damien's open briefcase. A woman with kind eyes and Damien's same strong features smiled from the frame. Your mother? She asked before she could stop herself. Damien's expression shuddered immediately. But then, slowly, deliberately, he relaxed. Yes, she passed away when I was 16. I'm sorry. She was the heart of this company, even though she never held an official position. My father built a business, but she understood people in a way he never could. Damien picked up the photograph, his thumb tracing the edge of the frame. After she died, my father threw himself into work. Became harder, more demanding. I suppose I learned from his example. Is that what you want? To be like him? The question hung in the air between them. Damien set down the photograph carefully. I used to think success required that kind of hardness. Now, I'm not so certain. That night, as Olivia gathered her things to leave, Damien called her back. Tomorrow we meet with Morrison's board. I need you there. Not taking notes in the corner, but sitting beside me. They need to see that Sterling Enterprises has depth, that we're not a one-man operation. Are you sure? Olivia asked, surprised. I've never been more certain of anything. The Morrison meeting took place in a glass-walled boardroom overlooking the harbor. 10 stern faces regarded Damien and Olivia with skepticism as they entered. Morrison himself, a silver-haired man in his 60s, offered a polite but reserved greeting. The presentation they had crafted together was flawless. Damien handled the financial projections with his usual commanding presence. But when questions arose about company culture and employee satisfaction, he turned to Olivia. She spoke with confidence about Sterling's investment in its people, about the innovative programs they had implemented, about the company's vision for sustainable growth. She could feel Damien's eyes on her, but rather than making her nervous, his attention felt like support. One board member, a sharp-eyed woman named Patricia, leaned forward. "Ms. Martinez, you've worked closely with Mr. Cross for several years. In your honest assessment, is Sterling Enterprises a company that values integrity as much as profit?" Olivia could have given a safe, diplomatic answer. Instead, she chose truth. 3 days ago, I would have struggled to answer that question. Mr. Cross has always been brilliant and driven, but he could also be demanding to the point of being harsh. However, this week I've seen a different side of him. I've seen someone willing to listen, to adapt, to value input from others. That kind of evolution speaks to integrity more than any prepared statement could. The room was silent for a moment. Then, Patricia smiled. "That's the most honest thing anyone has said in this room all week." The meeting concluded with Morrison's board agreeing to move forward with the merger. As they left the building, Damien was uncharacteristically quiet. "You took a risk in there," he said finally, as they walked toward his car. "So did you, when you brought me as your partner instead of your assistant." He stopped walking and turned to face her fully. The late afternoon sun caught the gray in his eyes, making them almost luminous. "Olivia, I need to tell you something." Before he could continue, his phone rang. The caller ID showed his father's name. Damien's expression hardened instantly, and he declined the call. "You don't have to talk about it," Olivia said gently. "My father wants me to attend a family dinner. He does this periodically, tries to control my personal life the way he controlled the business before I took over." Damien's voice was tight with old anger. "He doesn't understand boundaries. Never has. Is that why you push people away? Why you've built these walls?" Damien looked at her for a long moment. Yes and no. It's complicated. Most important things are. They stood there on the sidewalk as pedestrians flowed around them. Two people circling something neither was quite ready to name. The next day was Saturday. Technically outside their work week, but Damien called her anyway. "Are you free this afternoon?" "That depends on why you're asking, because I want to show you something. Not work-related. Just something I think you should see." 2 hours later, Olivia found herself in an art gallery in a quieter part of the city. Damien moved through the space with unexpected ease, stopping before certain paintings with genuine appreciation. "I didn't know you were interested in art," Olivia said, studying a vibrant, abstract piece. "My mother painted. Nothing professional, just for herself. But she taught me to see beauty in unexpected places." He gestured to the painting before them. "This one reminds me of her work. Bold, unafraid of color." They wandered through the gallery, conversation flowing more naturally than it ever had in the office. Damien told stories from his childhood, rare glimpses into the person behind the CEO persona. Olivia shared her own history, her family's struggles, her determination to build a career on her own terms. At a small cafe nearby, over coffee and pastries, Damien suddenly grew serious. "I owe you an apology." "A real one." "You already apologized," Olivia reminded him, "not adequately. The truth is, over the past months, I've been harder on you than anyone else. Not because your work was inadequate, but because I was trying to maintain distance." "Distance from what?" He met her eyes directly. "From the fact that I was developing feelings that had nothing to do with your professional capabilities." Olivia's heart stuttered. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that I've been a coward. I used criticism and coldness to keep you at arm's length, because the alternative terrified me. Caring about someone means vulnerability, and vulnerability means potential loss. After my mother died, I decided it was easier to not let anyone close. And now? Now I realize that pushing away the one person who saw through my defenses was the real mistake." He reached across the table, his hand hovering near hers. "This week, working with you as equals, seeing your strength and intelligence without the barrier of professional hierarchy, I remembered what it feels like to want something beyond success." Olivia felt tears prick her eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. "Damien, I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything yet. We still have 2 days left in our agreement. I just needed you to know the truth." That evening, As Olivia sat in her apartment replaying the day's revelations, she felt the weight of a decision forming. She had come into this week expecting to prove she could survive Damien's challenges, to earn her freedom with dignity and tact. She had not expected to discover that the man she thought she knew was actually someone far more complex, far more vulnerable, far more real. Tomorrow was the 6th day. One more day after that, and she would have to choose. The question was no longer whether she could work with Damien Cross. The question was whether she dared to risk her heart on someone who was just learning how to open. His Sunday morning arrived with unexpected sunshine, the kind that made the city look almost magical. Olivia woke with a sense of anticipation she couldn't quite name. Tomorrow would mark the end of their week-long agreement. But today felt suspended somehow, existing outside the normal rules of time. Her phone buzzed with a message from Damien. No work today. Meet me at Harbor Park at 10. Please. The addition of that single word, please, spoke volumes about how much had shifted between them. Harbor Park sprawled along the waterfront, a green oasis in the urban landscape. Olivia found Damien waiting near the fountain, dressed casually in jeans and a dark sweater, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. 2 coffee cups sat on the bench beside him. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said as she approached. "You said please. That's practically a legal summons from you." She accepted the coffee he offered, noting he had remembered exactly how she took it. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, following the path that curved along the water. Sailboats dotted the harbor, their white sails bright against the blue sky. Families picnicked on the grass. A street musician played guitar nearby, the melody drifting on the breeze. "I used to come here with my mother," Damien said eventually. "Every Sunday morning, rain or shine." She said that no matter how busy the week had been, it was important to remember there was more to life than business. She sounds wise. She was impatient. Far more patient than I've ever managed to be. He stopped walking and turned to face the water. "After she died, my father sold her paintings, cleared out her studio, removed every trace of her from our house. He said it was too painful to keep reminders. I think he was just afraid of feeling anything." Olivia touched his arm gently. "You're not your father, Damien? How can you be sure? You saw how I treated you, how I built walls to keep everyone at a distance. But you're here now. You're trying. That's the difference." He continued walking, and Damien began to share more. He told her about the pressure of taking over the company at 28, about the board members who doubted him, about the constant fear that he would fail his mother's legacy. He spoke about relationships that had fallen apart because he couldn't let anyone past his defenses, about friendships that had withered from neglect. "I've been alone for so long. I forgot what it felt like to have someone truly see me," he admitted. "And then you threw coffee on me," Olivia laughed, the sound surprising them both. "In my defense, you were being particularly insufferable that day." "I was. I had just gotten off the phone with my father. He was criticizing every decision I'd made that quarter, telling me I was too soft, not ruthless enough. I took that anger out on you, and you refused to accept it." "So the coffee incident was actually a good thing?" "The best thing that could have happened? It forced me to confront what I was becoming." He stopped walking again, this time turning to face her fully. "Olivia, I need to tell you something important." Before he could continue, a child's ball rolled toward them. A little girl, no more than 5, came running after it. Damien picked up the ball and handed it to her with a smile that transformed his face, making him look younger, lighter. The girl giggled and ran back to her parents, who waved their thanks. "You're good with children," Olivia observed. "My mother always said I would make a good father someday. I suppose I never thought I'd have the chance, given how I've lived my life." They found a bench overlooking the water and sat in the dappled shade of an old oak tree. The comfortable silence between them felt significant, as if they had crossed some invisible threshold into new territory. "I've made a decision," Damien said finally. "Regardless of what you choose tomorrow, I'm making changes. I'm going to therapy, something I should have done years ago. I'm going to learn how to be the kind of leader my mother would have been proud of, not the kind my father insisted I become. That's a big step. It's overdue. This week with you showed me what I've been missing. Not just professionally, but personally. You challenge me. You don't let me hide behind authority or coldness. You see both the person I am and the person I could be. Olivia felt her throat tighten with emotion. Damien, you need to understand something. I can't be the reason you change. That has to come from you, for you. I know. And it does. But you were the catalyst that made me realize change was necessary. They sat quietly, watching the water. A ferry moved slowly across the harbor, its horn sounding low and mournful. Overhead gulls wheeled and called, their cries mixing with the distant sound of traffic and the nearby musician's guitar. What are you afraid of? Olivia asked softly. Damien was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was rough with honesty. I'm afraid that if I let you in completely, if I allow myself to care as much as I want to, I'll lose you. Death, circumstances, my own failings. I've lost everyone I've ever truly loved. The pattern seems inevitable. Or maybe, Olivia said carefully, the pattern exists because you keep pushing people away before you can lose them. Maybe the real risk is never trying at all. He turned to look at her, his gray eyes intense. Is that what you want? For me to try? I want you to be honest with yourself about what you want. Not what you think you should want, not what serves the business, but what your heart is telling you. My heart is telling me that these 7 days with you have been the most real I've felt in years. My heart is telling me that I don't want tomorrow to be the end of anything. I want it to be a beginning. Olivia's breath caught. She had spent the entire week trying to maintain perspective, to remember that this was a professional arrangement with a clear endpoint. But somewhere along the way, her own walls had started to crumble. Scared too, she admitted. I'm scared of falling for someone who might retreat back into coldness the moment things get difficult. I'm scared of losing myself in a relationship where the power dynamics are inherently unequal. I'm scared that this feeling between us is just a temporary result of circumstances and proximity. Damien reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. Then let's be scared together. Let's take this slowly, figure it out as we go. I can't promise perfection, but I can promise honesty and effort. What would that even look like? You're still my boss, not if you take the position I'm offering you. Vice President of Strategic Development, equal footing, separate reporting lines, your own team and projects. It's a role I've been developing for months, but I couldn't imagine anyone else in it until now. Olivia stared at him. You're serious, completely. Whether or not you choose to explore a personal relationship with me, you've earned this professionally. The work you did this week, the insights you brought to the Morrison deal, your ability to see solutions I miss. Sterling Enterprises needs your perspective at the executive level. And if things don't work out between us personally, then we're professionals who can maintain appropriate boundaries. I won't lie and say it wouldn't be complicated, but I trust us to handle it with maturity. The afternoon sun had begun its descent, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Around them, families packed up their picnics, joggers completed their loops. Life continued in its ordinary, extraordinary way. I need tonight to think, Olivia said finally. This is too important to decide in a moment, no matter how perfect the setting. I understand. Damien squeezed her hand gently before releasing it. Tomorrow morning, regular time, come to my office. Whatever you decide, I'll respect it. They walked back through the park together, the comfortable silence now charged with possibility. At the parking lot, Damien hesitated before pulling her into an embrace. It was warm and solid, and Olivia allowed herself to sink into it, breathing in his scent of cedar and something uniquely him. Thank you, he whispered against her hair. For this week, for your honesty, for not giving up on me, even when I gave you every reason to.
Night.
Olivia sat in her apartment with a cup of tea, watching the city lights twinkle to life. She thought about the woman she had been a week ago, ready to walk away from a job that was destroying her spirit. She thought about the man Damien had revealed himself to be. Beneath the cold exterior layers of protection and fear, she thought about risk and reward, about the courage it takes to be vulnerable, about the difference between settling and choosing. And slowly, with the clarity that comes from honest reflection, she realized that her decision had already been made. Not from desperation or fear, but from hope. Monday morning arrived with a mixture of clouds and sunshine, as if the weather itself couldn't decide what mood to set. Olivia dressed carefully in a deep blue suit that made her feel powerful and professional. She arrived at Sterling Enterprises at the usual time, her heart steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. Damien's office door was open. He stood by the windows as he had on that first morning of their agreement. coffee in hand, but this time when he turned to face her. His expression was open, vulnerable, hopeful. "Good morning," he said softly. "Good morning." Olivia set down her bag and walked to stand before him. "I have my answer. I'm listening. I accept the position of Vice President of Strategic Development. I want to help build Sterling Enterprises into a company that values both excellence and humanity." Relief flooded Damien's face, but he waited, sensing there was more. And Olivia continued, her voice steady and sure. "I want to see where this goes between us. Not because I need you, not because you're my boss, but because in the past week, I've seen a man worth taking a risk on. A man who's willing to face his fears and grow. A man who makes me want to be braver too." Damien closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands coming up to frame her face. "Are you certain?" "As certain as anyone can be when stepping into the unknown. Then I promise you this. I will work every day to be worthy of your trust. I will stumble and make mistakes, but I will always be honest with you. And I will never take your presence in my life for granted. That's all I ask." When he kissed her, it was different from the performance at the investor event. This kiss was soft and genuine, a promise and a question all at once. Olivia rose on her toes, wrapping her arms around his neck, and kissed him back with all the hope and fear and possibilities she felt. When they finally pulled apart, both were smiling. "So what happens now?" Olivia asked. "Now we get to work. Together." Damien took her hand, lacing their fingers together. "We have a company to run, a merger to finalize, and about 1,000 challenges ahead. And after work? After work, I thought I might take you to dinner, somewhere without business associates or expectations. Just us, figuring out how to be 2 people who care about each other. I'd like that." As they stood together in that office, the city spreading out beneath them, both understood that they were beginning something fragile and precious. There would be difficulties ahead, moments of doubt, the inevitable challenges of building both a professional partnership and a personal relationship. But they also understood something more important. Sometimes the greatest courage is not in walking away, but in staying and fighting for something worth having. Sometimes the coldest hearts can thaw, given patience and genuine connection. And sometimes, a single impulsive act, like throwing coffee on an arrogant millionaire, can set in motion a chain of events that changes everything. 6 months later, at the company's annual gala, Olivia stood beside Damien as he gave a speech about the importance of corporate culture and employee well-being. She watched him speak with passion about creating a workplace where people felt valued, where excellence and kindness could coexist, where success was measured not just in profit but in positive impact. The staff watched their CEO with new appreciation. Recognizing the changes he had implemented, he had become more approachable, more willing to listen, more human. And those who knew whispered that much of the credit belonged to the woman standing beside him, the one who had dared to throw coffee and demand better. After the speech, as they danced together in the elegant ballroom, Damien pulled Olivia close. "Happy?" he asked. "Very," she replied, resting her head against his shoulder. "Though I do miss the days when I could throw coffee on you without consequence." He laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "Who says there would be no consequence? I can think of several appropriate responses to such behavior." "Oh, really?" Such as this." And he kissed her there on the dance floor, in front of colleagues and clients and everyone who mattered, making it clear that whatever power dynamics had once existed between them had transformed into something far more balanced, far more real as they swayed to the music, the city lights twinkling beyond the windows. Both knew that this was not an ending, but a continuation. The story that had begun with anger and coffee stains had become something neither had expected but both had needed. Love, like trust, had to be earned daily through actions and choices, and the courage to be vulnerable. And in choosing each other, again and again, they had found something more valuable than any business success. They had found home. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this story. If you enjoyed this content, don't forget to click like, share the story with your friends and family, and subscribe to O'Connell so you don't miss out on more meaningful stories.